Hello students, now we will see some of important points from evolution chapter. In 1938, some fishes were caught from South Africa and those fishes are named as lobe fins. Named as lobe fins. These animals are considered to be first evolved amphibians. Next, some of the plant species called as nettles. Those belong to Cretaceous period. Those are the only gymnosperms that have xylem vessels. Basically, gymnosperms have xylem tracheids only, but here the only exception is nettles, which is also a gymnosperm. It is considered to be having xylem vessels. Some reptiles, we know that reptiles live on the land, went back into water to modify themselves as aquatic or amphibian-like organisms. Water and lead aquatic life. Example for such reptile is Ichthyosaurus. Next, another example is the first evolved mammals are considered to be shrews. The first evolved mammals are considered to be shrews. Shrews are rat-like animals. What are these shrews means? Rat-like animals. Darwin has proposed this natural selection theory, which states that organism is trying to adapt to exist or survive in the nature. Simultaneously, means at the same time, nature is also selecting the dominant species or the species which can exist by tolerating all the objections that it has across in its lifetime. So nature is selecting only the organism which can adopt in its lifetime and exist in the nature. So here both organism and the nature are playing a key role for the organism to survive in the nature. So natural selection is of three types. One is stabilizing evolution. Second one is directional evolution. Third one is disruptive evolution. Stabilizing evolution includes the existence of or the selection by the nature of intermediate forms only. Nature is not selecting sometimes regarding some types of organisms, the original one or the changed one. But it is selecting the intermediate type of organism. For suppose, if you take plant height, the short sized or the dwarf plants cannot exist because they do not get proper sunlight. The long ones or the long plants cannot exist, or if they are present, all are long plants means they cannot survive because the pollinating agents may not reach the most heighted areas. So plants have been adopted themselves into a moderate height plants. Some exceptions are there like eucalyptus and sequoia. I am not talking about that. I said you that stabilizing cell evolution is about some organisms which are selected by the nature in their intermediate forms. Another example we can take agouti mice. Means nature has not selected the existence of white colored or black colored, but it has selected during some type of means time periods the brown colored or the light brown colored mice. Another example also we can take the cactus spines. There are some peccaries, some types of birds which eat these fruits, cactus fruits. Those birds are preferring only the thin spine containing fruits. So there the fruits are being taken by the birds. Another type of predators are there. Those are called as infectious insects. Those are preferring the the thick spine containing fruits. So both of them are being taken or eaten by the insects one type and peccaries another type of predators. So in such cases the cactus has developed an intermediate sized spines on the stems and on the fruits to survive its next generations or to conserve its next generations. Another example we can also take that like human babies who are born with moderate weight of the body, more weight of the body and less weight of the body. The children who are born with less weight, there is very less chance for them to survive. If precautions are there, there is 100% safe side for the babies. But if the baby is of more weight, then there will be more health complications because of the more weight. So mostly, normally, the babies are born with normal or moderate weight only. So these are few examples to explain the stabilizing evolution. So first one, stabilizing evolution. Nature has selected the intermediate forms in case of some organisms or some types of organisms. Here we can take examples like human birth weight. Second example, cactus spines. Third example, agouti mice. Next, another example is heterozygous genotype or alleles of sickle cell anemia. Here, the alleles should be having like this. Then such allele containing organism is resistant to malaria fever. So, organisms means human beings in African countries, most of them are selected by the nature with having such type of allele pairs. Another example is plant height. Another example is camouflage coat color, skin coat color. Next, there is a graph that is representing this stabilizing evolution. If you take out a graph, and give here y-axis and x-axis, then if you take here the organisms on the x-axis, normally in nature all types of modified organisms and original organisms and modified organisms will be existed basing on the time period, basing on the food habitats, etc. Modified organisms, both will be existed. Think that this is the initial graph. Then, in course of evolution, nature has selected the intermediate forms of organisms. Then, the graph will be changed like with narrow tip end. This area which is marked with red sketch color, this is nothing but organisms of intermediate type. Here the peak is very narrow. So original one, so up to here, this is original one, this is modified organism, but not having means only the newly changed character. The intermediate one will be having some features of the original and some features phenotypically and genotypically of the modified ones. But here original ones will not be having the characteristic features of the intermediate one, and modified ones will not be having the characteristic features of intermediate or original type of organism. Here the peak is narrow. Another point, stabilizing evolution, it is also called as balancing selection. It is also called as centripetal selection. Centripetal selection. Second one, directional evolution. So here what happened, based on the changing environmental conditions, based on the conditions in the habitat or in the geographical area, based on the seasonal changes, how the organism phenotypic characters are maintained. Are the original species maintained as it is, or the changed one type of phenotypes are again present more in number. Basing on that, the graph or the organism population will be increased either to the changed forms or variants, or to the original number will be either one will be more. But here nature, in case of some organisms, has not selected either intermediate forms. It has selected only the original forms or completely variated, or the organisms which have shown variations. Here some organisms are selected by nature in their original forms or completely variant forms, but not in intermediate forms. Here we can take one example like moths in industrialized, that is Manchester area. Moths during industrial melanization. Another example we can also take like giraffe neck. Nature has selected long-necked giraffes. Another example we can take, that is European bears. Here, the size of the bear is not too small. The size of the bear is not too large or big. The organisms which were existed previously, those organisms have shown little bit change, means increasing of size, but not the intermediate forms. Those are taken as examples under European bears. Some under this, if we see, small bears existed in continental period and large bears existed in ice glacial period. If you take the graph, actually the organisms should be like this. Means if we divide this one by drawing a central axis, here original species and here mutated species must be there. But in course of evolution, what happens? Only either one, either this original species or the mutated species, any one will be existed, but not the intermediate forms. Original species, mutated species. But this one is not existed. Intermediate forms are not selected by the organism. We can also easily identify directional evolution means the evolution has the graph which is drawn on the basis of evolution has moved in any one direction, either to the original type or to the completely mutated type. But the intermediate graph is not existed in case of directional evolution. Third one, disruptive evolution. In this type of evolution, nature has selected both the type of original species and the modified species to exist in it. It means that the intermediate forms are not existed in nature, but the original species have been existed. At the same time, the equal number of the modified species also existed in nature. Both original species and variants are equally selected in a number by nature, but intermediate forms are not selected. Here we can take one example like Darwin finches. Though organisms have modified their beak into different shapes, all the varieties are maintained mostly approximately equal in numbers. Darwin finches. Next, grey and white rabbits in Himalayas. These both are selected. Another example we can take, tail of squirrels, cats, etc. Next, beak of hummingbird. This was also considered to be best example for disruptive evolution. Another example is oysters. Oysters, light colored oysters used to get blended with the color of the rock. and dark colored oysters used to get blended with the shadows that are seen in the oceans or seas. So here two varieties or two variants, that is white and dark oysters. These are selected by nature. These got blended with color of rock. These got blended with the shady regions. So this is about the disruptive evolution. If you see the graph, take out the types of organisms on x and y axis. The graph will show maximum equal number of type A and type B, that is original forms and variants also. But here intermediate forms that are showing any 3 or 4 different types of colors are not seen in case of disruptive evolution, and the graph will be looking like this. So these are about natural selections and types of natural selections: stabilizing evolution, directional evolution, and disruptive evolution. One more word we will learn from this chapter, that is about saltation term. What is meant by saltation? If mutations occur large in number in one specific area or by one type of organisms or population, then such condition is called as saltation. We can also give simple term for this saltation as single step mutation in a large population. So, term that is saltation. If suddenly mutations happen in a large number, such condition is called as saltation. Here we can also term this one as single step mutation in large population. Next, another term is there, that is branching descent. Branching descent means, in case of genetic drift, we consider the genetic material or the gene pool that has migrated from an existing population and it develops new varieties. So all the genes in those new organisms we are considering as genetic drift. But here, in case of branching descent, arising of new species from a common ancestor in unique habitat. So such process is called as branching descent, or such condition is called as branching descent. So this saltation term you can read in page number 135 of NCERT, and branching descent term in page number 134 of NCERT. Next, another graphs, that is about diagrammatic representation of operation of natural selection of different traits, that is types of natural selection. You can read from page number 136. So this is about the natural selection and its types and some of the important terms.